Written in Bone, Chapter 1, Part 2. In a sense, that discovery wasn't a surprise. According to the historical record, almost 40% of the settlers who came to the Chesapeake during the 1600s died within weeks or months of their arrival. Illness killed some, while others succumbed to starvation. The area's Native Americans fought to defend the land from the English newcomers, resulting in other deaths. An unmarked cemetery that lay beneath the ruins of the 17th century buildings, about 700 feet, or 213 meters, outside the fort confirmed the high mortality rate. During the 1950s, archaeologists had located the outlines of 70 graves in the burial ground and excavated several of them. These remains, plus graves that were subsequently excavated by the Rediscovery Project team members, revealed the burials of 83 individuals. Let's go back up here and look at our pictures. So you can see the picture of what the fort wall would look like. Here, an archaeologist removes clay from around a palisade post to leave behind a soil cast of the base of each side-by-side log. Here, 2 double burials were among the graves found by the team. Each grave contained 2 bodies that had been buried together, and you can see them lying side by side here and side by side here. Oops. Although Kelso and Owsley believed that this outer cemetery was used until the 1630s, artifacts found in some of the graves indicate that people were buried there during the earliest years of the fort. Many of these individuals were buried quickly, as if the colonists had been in a rush. This evidence suggests that these burials contain the remains of colonists who died during the winter of 1609 to 1610. The historical record reveals that so many colonists perished from disease and lack of food during this period that it became known as the starving time. In fact, Kelso estimates that more than 150 of Jamestown's 215 colonists lost their lives that winter. The deaths occurred so frequently that at times the survivors buried 2 and even 3 bodies in the same grave. Why did the Jamestown colonists have 2 cemeteries, one inside the fort and one outside? Well, there are several possible answers to this question. The historical record mentions that violent conflicts with Indians occurred during the summer of 1607. At times, the fort was under siege and it wasn't safe for the settlers to leave the fort to bury their dead. The colonists also didn't want the Native Americans to know how many men had died. They may have felt that revealing this weakening of their numbers would make their enemies bolder. On the other hand, if the Indians believed that the settlers had a strong force, perhaps they would be less likely to attack. The archaeologists are also considering a different theory. Most of the graves inside the fort are grouped near the southwestern end of the fort, around an open area that contains no graves. Archaeologist Carter C. Hudgens thinks the team has figured out why. The graves may be clustered around a church, he explained. Cemeteries are commonly located alongside churches, and the historical record does mention that a church was built inside the fort. As long as burial space was still available inside the fort, the colonists may have preferred to bury their dead alongside the church. We still need to find the remains of the church to support this theory, Hudgens added. Since graves are often found in unexpected places, how do archaeologists first know that they may have located one, especially if it's unmarked and covered with soil that no one has dug up for centuries? Once again, the most important clues are often in the soil itself. This diagram shows the locations of the graves found in the cemetery that was 700 feet or 213 meters away from the fort. So here we have a key. All the pink means it was multiple burials in shaft. The green, burials with clothing. The blue, burials with lead shot. And then this purplish, grayish, foundations overlay burial ground. Under the soil. While it's easy to locate graves in a cemetery with headstones, unless a person has been trained in archaeology, an unmarked grave may not be immediately obvious. Most burials are first noticed as stains on the surface of the subsoil. When people bury a body, they dig a pit called a grave shaft. After placing the body in the grave, they backfill, or fill in, the shaft with the soil that had been removed. Because the backfill soil contains the mixed soils of the excavated layers, it's a different color than the soil that forms the walls of the grave shaft. The result is a stain that remains even centuries later. When archaeologists uncover a soil stain that approaches 6 feet, or 2 meters, long by 2 feet, 0.6 meters wide, about the length and width of an adult human body or its coffin, they become fairly confident they've found a grave. The rectangular dark soil stains indicate grave shafts. The grave shaft parallel to the western palisade wall contained the remains that were later labeled JR 1225B. Such a stain was the first sign of the grave that contained the teenage boy whose bones were later examined by Doug Owsley. As the archaeologists scraped the subsoil surface, their trowels exposed a dark area. They scraped the soil further until they had exposed the complete stain. It was sized and shaped perfectly for a human grave. At this point, the team shifted to a standard procedure for grave excavations. First, we take a photo of the stain of the grave shaft, explained William Kelso. The photograph serves as a permanent record of the appearance of the stain prior to excavation. Next, soil is removed and placed in buckets. As each bucket is taken out of the grave shaft, its contents are sifted through a mesh screen with holes measuring 0.25 inches on each side. As Kelso noted, we screen every bit of grave shaft soil to ensure that not even the tiniest artifact is overlooked. Some artifacts, buttons and coins for example, can be dated, which helps to establish a time frame for the burial. In the Chesapeake area, most 17th century colonial skeletons are buried at a depth of 2.5 to 4 feet. We never know exactly how deeply buried the individual is going to be, explained Hudgens, so we have to use caution. As the archaeologist reaches the depth where the remains are first likely to be encountered, the pace of work slows. The archaeologists keep their eyes peeled for all signs of burial, not just bones. They look for surviving remnants of coffins, such as bits of wood or nails. Such objects may provide useful information when they're analyzed in the laboratory. In the case of the teenage boy's grave, however, the archaeologists found no evidence of a coffin. As the excavation of the shaft progressed, the team's anticipation grew. No matter how high the level of excitement may be at an archaeological dig, nothing can be permitted to disrupt the meticulous use of scientific methods and procedures. Proper excavation requires that every feature and found object be given a unique identifying number. The grave Hudgens was excavating was designated JR 1225. The initials stand for Jamestown Rediscovery, while the number represents the complete grave as a specific feature. Unique features and objects found within the grave would be assigned a letter in order of discovery. The first of these, the soil that filled the grave shaft, was JR 1225A. Hudgens dug further until a flash of tan caught his eye. As he wiped away the soil, he saw a bone. The Jamestown Rediscovery Project was about to meet JR 1225B.